Hello, everybody. I'm Giles Perkins, Head of Future Mobility for WSP, and also the Programme Director for ADEPT Live Labs, the £23 million innovation project focusing on local roads. Sat alongside me today at the virtual Fireside is Jason Pavey, Market Director for Local Transport at Atkins, and today we're talking to Staffordshire. So, Louise, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Giles. My name's Louise Clayton and I'm Head of Transport Operations and Future Connectivity at Staffordshire County Council. I was lucky enough to be invited to join some of the early workshops before the Live Labs funding programme was actually announced. So I've been on this journey for many years, you might say.
Excellent, thank you. So Live Labs in Staffordshire is quite interesting because it's effectively a live lab within a live lab. So can you explain the process that you've gone through in Staffordshire, what you're hoping to achieve, what you are achieving, and the difference you expect to make?
Of course. Yes, our Live Labs programme is called Simulate, and it combines research and feasibility with collaborative incubation and trialling of SMEs to deliver a radical new vision for air quality and mobility in Staffordshire. The programme is based on two challenges in essence, urban air quality and mobility. And this was a really, really exciting opportunity because, as you say, it's quite different to our Live Labs. So at the very start, we did not know what we would be delivering. We chose to go about an open challenge. In the true nature of Live Labs, we're looking for innovation from SMEs. So our £1.95 million has predominantly been targeting the testing and trialling of innovative solutions that will address those two major areas for Staffordshire, urban air quality and mobility.
Fantastic. So could you just give a little bit of detail of where, we've got the Live Lab, and then you've gone through a process within the Live Lab to secure those SMEs. Can you just describe, because this is fascinating, it's like meta Live Labs, which we've ended up with. Can you describe the process that you went through within the Live Labs and who the kind of SMEs that you've now got on board and what they'll be doing?
Of course. So we outlined our two key challenges to begin with, and that took a significant amount of time actually, because we wanted to work with all of our partners and other agencies. So that is AMI, our strategic partner, Keele University, our academic partner, and the Connected Places Catapult as well. We also engage with all of our districts because we're a two-tier authority, and a lot of these challenges will be taking place out in the districts in live testbed areas. Time to gather local data and information and knowledge from the offices in all of the local authorities, and then use the technical expertise from those partners such as AMI, Keele and CPC to develop those challenges. It was absolutely critical that CPC were involved because they helped us reach out to a far wider audience than we would have otherwise been able to reach. And we held a Live Labs networking event literally a week before the country went into lockdown, down in London in March this year.
You did have a very on-brand beverage, if I remember.
We did, yes, Corona. Yeah, how appropriate. And actually, as part of that event, I think we had about 100 SMEs present. I think that event actually resulted in the huge amount of interest that we had within the programme. So we actually had more than 130 applications when we were expecting around 50. So that was absolutely fantastic for all of us involved in the process, but it brought about its own challenges because we only had limited funding. So we knew that right from the word go, we'd have to reduce that number down to around 10. The quality was absolutely remarkable and the range of innovation was huge. So that has been one of the most challenging parts of this to date, just trying to identify the 10 best that would fit with our programme. We actually had an application for jetpacks, but I think Cumbria have led with that one. Didn't quite meet the criteria for our mobility agenda.
Gosh, jetpacks for the future. Thanks, Louise. And so, having whittled that down to a smaller number of SMEs, what type of solutions are you either envisaged or in the process of trialling? What do they look like quite practically?
I'd say they're 50-50. So half of them are looking at reducing carbon emissions. They're looking at changes to how people choose to travel. So they're around the mobility agenda. So 2 providers are trialling e-scooters, for example, in 2 urban centres. And we chose to trial 2 because their business models are slightly different and their pricing structures are very different. So what we want to do is test which works best in a rural, semi-rural, urban county like ours. The other half of the projects are really looking at air scrubbing or cleaning the air. So where that pollution exists, where the air quality isn't that great, how much can we remove? How much can we improve the air quality? But it also goes a step further. So 2 of those providers are green walls and moss walls. And what we're hoping to do with Keele University is to understand the wider benefits and not only monitor the improvements in air quality at those locations, but also the mental health and well-being and the additional benefits to the communities that they will serve.
Yeah.
So it's a range really of mobility and air quality scrubbing solutions.
Sure, no, thanks, Louise. And the whole well-being piece there, particularly in the current climate, is so important, isn't it, I guess? Just go back to things like the e-scooters and trying to drive modal shift. I'm just interested in, how the appetite of the users, the end users, the residents, communities, what's that felt like, and how are you gaining the sort of input from the end user?
We're working with community groups, so local community groups, the districts who have some more informal partnerships as well, and the police. So they've been a huge part of this actually to make sure that this works. And what we've done is we've reached out to the public and said, tell us what you think, tell us how you feel, tell us what's good, tell us what's bad. We really do want to know. In the first couple of weeks, I think we had potentially 90 incidences. These weren't complaints, but these were 90 potential happenings that were captured on CCTV or recorded or passed on to us. However, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, everything has settled down, I have to say, and the public have got used to them. They're part of the street furniture. They're accepted now. And what we're now getting is feedback from local communities to say, oh, could you put a parking bay over there? Because actually we think that would be better. And the data is now showing us, because this is all evidence and data led, the data is now showing us that we're actually getting more commuter journeys, we're getting regular travel patterns, we're able to understand where the scooter's starting point, so the pickup point should be, and where the drop-off point is, so that we can reposition. So that's really exciting. We didn't expect that to happen so quickly. We always knew we'd expand the scheme, so we took the view that we'd start quite small with these scooters, so we only deployed 20 in each of the areas.
So which are the 2 areas, just out of interest?
Sorry, Stafford, so Ginger have deployed in Stafford, and Zwings, formerly Blue Zoom, have deployed up in Newcastle. And they are very, there's a lot of similarities, but there are quite a few differences, as I said. So one of them, the Stafford scheme is for 18 years and above, and the Newcastle scheme is 16 and above. So obviously you've got a different demographic that you might be reaching out to as well. So that's been hugely interesting. From the feedback from the public, though, we've already expanded the geographical areas that we're covering much more quickly than we ever anticipated. In fact, we're now looking to reach out into the more rural areas and expand from the urban centre, which is hugely exciting because those are the people that we really need to reach. So these are the journeys that are 2, 3, 4 miles in distance that we really need to reduce or change or stop. So I have to say, so far, so good. Although we did have an e-scooter thrown in the river. I have to confess to that.
Did you retrieve it?
On the very first day. We did. Unfortunately, it wasn't fixable, but never mind. There we go.
So it's interesting, isn't it, that kind of obviously with the transition through COVID, that link between mobility and air quality and that acceleration of change. So it's kind of, it's almost kind of that you're at the zeitgeist of lots of things coming together in terms of trying to tackle air quality, trying to look at modal shift, trying to look at new entrants coming into the market. How's COVID wrapped around all of this? Has it been beneficial? Has it been problematic? Because I think it's other live labs have struggled with their supply chains and all this sort of thing. But I think from a I'm a future mobility expert, so I find what you're doing really interesting. What I find interesting is COVID actually changed the behavioural bit and led to people doing things differently that they might not have done before.
I do really believe that. I mean, we've had a paradigm shift, haven't we? I mean, what a fantastic test bed to go into lockdown and everybody not be able to do what they normally do. Having said that, our programme, we went into lockdown as a nation and our programme was just at the point of selecting the SMEs at that point. And one of the challenges we did have was how to do that. We were going to hold a Dragon's Den style event. We had to do that virtually, but actually we had to learn to use different technologies, and that resulted in a far better outcome, actually, because we were able to involve far many partners than we would have initially. So there have been some benefits to COVID. It's tested us, but we've found ways around it. We had a question around the air quality sensors that we've deployed using EarthSense. So originally they were set for deployment, then we went into lockdown, but we agreed that actually it was crucially important to gather the data, even though journeys weren't normal, far from it, because that could provide some intelligence for the future that would be very, very helpful. And actually we don't want it to return to normal. What we want to do is prevent it from ever getting back to that in a way. So yes, it has been challenging, but no, I think our programme has actually not benefited, but we've worked with it. It certainly hasn't delayed anything that we've needed to do.
Fantastic.
That's great. And the other, just flipping to the other half of the programme, Louise. So we talked about the e-scooters, etc. You alluded to or started to talk about air scrubbing and quality. Can you just give me a little bit more flavour of what that element of the programme is?
Yes, of course, yeah. So we identified several locations across the whole of the county in AQMA areas, air quality management zones, using our colleagues in the districts, the environmental officers. And we identified a couple of locations that we felt air quality was particularly poor, that would be really suitable to try and test some form of air scrubber or air cleaning solution. One of those was in Newcastle, and it's outside a primary school that sits alongside a dual carriageway, with pedestrian crossing points, a bus station on the other side, very, very busy network. It's literally on a ring road. And through working with the school, we've managed to arrange for several of the fence panels to be removed and replaced with a green wall. The company have been absolutely fantastic to work with this SME, and actually are doing a lot more for the school over and above. And I think it's what this has shown me is not only did this opportunity allow us to reach out and test some innovative solutions and work with these SMEs, but it's gone far further than we ever envisaged, because actually they're just really, really keen to work with us, work with communities, work with schools, work with the other agencies. So that particular green wall, we will be monitoring the air quality in and around the school playground. On the other side of the wall, which is where the pedestrians and parents will stand to cross the road, it's where the school crossing patrol stands to wait for the traffic to stop. So we will be monitoring that to see whether or not there is an improvement. And obviously, we might find that the weather has an impact on that. We might find that the area it covers isn't sufficient. That's the beauty of this. We don't know yet. We're hoping it'll be successful. But like I mentioned earlier, working with Keele, there are also the wider benefits that we want to understand. So actually the mental health and well-being, what it means to the community, is going to improve how things look in that particular location.
So it's very kind of outcome driven that your focus is really in Staffordshire. So if you think about kind of I'm really pleased you kind of opened with the journey that you've been on right from the start when we had the meet. I think it was in Birmingham. We had those first workshops. Have you got any advice for the local authorities wanting to jump into the swimming pool of innovation as to what they should do? What's your advice to them?
Absolutely do it. Now, if this opportunity hadn't have happened, Staffordshire would not be in this position right now. We would not be working with 10 SMEs. We would not have had our eyes open to some of the opportunities out there. And I think this has really changed how I feel and the organisation, how we will approach future projects. So for many years, we've bid into DFT funds and grants, and usually we'd know what solution we're going to deliver. So we'd write a bid and this is what we're going to do, and there are your targets, and there you go away and evaluate. This is really different, and actually it was quite challenging to begin with because it was so ambiguous, but having worked through all of that and kept in mind that this has to be outcome focused has meant that we've got a far stronger project now, I feel. It felt a bit slow to begin with, Giles, and I'm sure I shared that with you. It's a learning curve, but what I would say to local authorities is you need to bite the bullet And working with the SMEs has been absolutely fantastic. So don't worry if you don't know what the solution is. Don't worry if it's not proven, because actually just trust the process and work with them, and anything's possible. We had 130 applications. The only sad part of this is that we couldn't work with the other 120. So we're now looking at a process of how we could perhaps re-engage with some of those.
Fantastic. Thank you, Louise, and thank you, Jason. Sat alongside me in our, I don't know, are we in a virtual pub? I'm not sure. We're around a virtual fireside. If you want to find out more about Adept Live Labs, just Google Adept Live Labs, where you'll find white papers, you'll find our end of year report, you'll find news pieces and blogs and all sorts of information. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you soon.